and welcome to the next instalment of the RAS200 premieres. And today I am joined by two members of the Care for Carers team. If you could please introduce yourselves and your roles at Care for Carers.
Well, I'm Ruth McLennan and I'm the manager at Care for Carers.
I'm Deepa Ward and I'm the project worker for the RAS200 project.
So could you tell me about the sort of things that Care for Carers would have done before being part of the RAS200 project?
Well, as we're a charity, but we're a carers organisation, so we're set up to support unpaid family carers, and that involves support and information and training. But as an organisation, we developed into providing breaks from caring to unpaid carers, so taking them away from their caring situation so they could recharge their batteries, get a break, get time out, do something for themselves, have a bit of fun, but respite for themselves. So we've always got that focus on talking to people and supporting carers in the situation they're in. But I think the RAS funding allowed us to develop our short break side more.
Mm-hmm.
So the short breaks existed. It was the sort of astronomy side of things that was completely new when you joined us.
Yeah, a bit more than that as well, because I mean, we before RAS funding came along, we hadn't tried to go. We had feedback from carers that they were interested in nature, country, outside, rural, but we hadn't had the capacity or the funding to try that element of it either. So the RAS funding allowed us to combine some of those things and take people away, in fact, to remote rural locations, which we had absolutely never tried before. That was totally new.
So what sort of residentials would you have done previously?
Mainly up to that point, we mainly did residentials within outdoor education facilities.
Okay.
So not always urban based, but small town based. We hadn't actually taken groups to rural locations. We hadn't kind of expanded our package of breaks in that way, which we have now, significantly. So yeah, before that it was a different program that we offered.
And then how did you get involved in the astronomy project? It seems quite different to what I know said about the residentials and that, but it seems quite different to what Care for Carers would have provided previously.
Yeah, we had about 7 years ago, 8 years ago maybe, we were doing a lot of day breaks, events, activities, short activities, and a partner in that for us was Astronomical in Edinburgh, and they were hugely supportive to us. So that was the first time we took carers, because it went a bit more in depth. It wasn't just a visit. We would do workshops, they would give talks. We had access to all that knowledge and information there in the staff team. So we did a lot of evaluation. We got a bit of funding to do some really in-depth evaluation. And out of that came the feedback about how important the science element was, how people wanted to know more, what they wanted to know more about, what they were curious about. And the relationship we developed between the staff there and our staff, that then meant that they invited us to the RAS200. Must have been the initial launch. It must have been the initial meetings that you had around the country, and they invited us to come along. Otherwise we wouldn't have known about it actually. We wouldn't have found out about it. So I went along to that, and it all came from there.
Yeah, I think I remember meeting you at our Dynamic Earth. Those were the town hall meetings that we did right at the beginning, where we kind of toured the country as best we could to kind of talk about the project, and it was it was one of the first projects I did when I joined the RAS, and it was a great way of meeting people in the field, so to speak, because I think until then the RAS had been historically quite London centred, so it was really nice to kind of get out there and meet people that weren't anywhere near London, and ending up getting to work with them, so it's great.
Yeah. And the people in that room, I mean, there were people in that room who became our partners, and who are still our partners, and have developed into really strong kind of relationships. But there's no other context we would have met in.
Yeah, yeah. It is
just wouldn't have happened.
A wonderful coincidence.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's amazing to think, because that was, you know, 2014, 2015 must have been. It's a long time ago now, isn't it? Like, wow.
Yeah.
And what, with the actual astronomy side of the project, what does that entail? What does the astronomy residential include, and what other things do you do for RAS200?
Well, there's quite a lot of other preparation that goes hand in hand with planning an astronomy programme for the residential with Stephen. And I think, like Ruth was saying, you know, we would have gone locally, or more locally anyway, within a 20 or 30 mile radius. So planning a huge trip involving maybe up to 7 hours of travelling, including kind of, it could be a train, minibus, and then another train, and then the ferry, staying overnight in between. So managing people's kind of anxiety around that was a big thing, because we've never done it. A lot of people that we work with haven't actually visited many parts of Scotland. Actually, I've never been to an island before, so this was a first for so many people. So just reassuring them about the travel was a major feat. And then also kind of getting them to think about what that involved for them in terms of making respite arrangements for the person that they care for. We would have gone away for 2 nights. We're now going away for 3 nights with possible disruptions and delays. So there was a lot of planning for the carers, and a lot of notice needing to be given, you know, in terms of our programme. We try and get it out a year beforehand so that people have got plenty of time to plan respite breaks. So yeah, it's not just the astronomy side is something that I do as Stephen, but then there's kind of doing the booking the bed and breakfast, the youth hostels, the meals, thinking about dietary requirements, thinking about people's frailty and managing to walk or get on and off the ferry, bringing different personalities together who've never met for quite an intense kind of time. So yeah, and building relationships with the people on the other side as well. So yeah, it was, I think it was it was a big learning curve for us, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of the logistics and the risk assessment of what you're doing and how you're going to do it, and that plan A, plan B thing, you know, you're not half an hour away from town, you know.
No.
If the wind's going to kick up, you know, the ferry's not going to run. How are you going to get there? What if the tutors don't get there? You know, all of that kind of practicality. But there's something. So it does in terms of the engagement and the involvement and time to do it. There's no easy way out of that. But the outcomes that we get from doing it make every single penny worth it. You know, there's just no two ways about it. It's in a different league. The outcomes that we get from these weekends for people are different from just generic short breaks where we might go for an overnight or a couple of nights somewhere. This has got something very focused about it, and part of that, some of that is about the learning. It is about the fact that they're immersed. You know, if we're going to Call or we're going to, you know, Dumfries and Galloway or they are immersed in that for the duration of the time, and there is something different about that as well.
Yeah, that must be, like you said, if it's for some people, if it's the first time that they've been to an island or something like that, and then they're with people who don't know, they're worrying about the person that is dependent on them back at home. It must be quite quite
Yeah.
scary to start with. You know, it's
Yeah.
always hard making new friends,
Yeah.
let alone in unusual settings. So I guess you have to be quite flexible, because at the last minute they might not be able to come, or something might happen that, you know, sort of changes plans and things like that.
Yeah, we have had that on a few occasions. So we have people on a waiting list. But again, you know, planning for a 4-day break isn't easy. So it's hard for us to then fill that space. But then the smaller numbers mean kind of more focus on the individuals within the group and the learning. Like Ruth says, people just seem to, they just respond to it so well. And because we work so closely with the Cosmos Planetarium, and they built a relationship with Stephen by that time. He's been on the ferry with us most of the time, you know, and he's on the island and experiencing a lot of things that we're going through. So that makes for a really good experience. The number of people, you know, the small number of people on the break.
Yeah, you mentioned Stephen at Cosmos Planetarium. Have there been other organisations that you've worked with, or RAS fellows, or sort of, I suppose you mentioned our Dynamic Earth as well, but have there been anyone else that you've worked with, or is it all sort of mainly down to Stephen and the wonderful work that he does?
We've worked with the Royal Observatory. We did quite a lot of work with them in the first 2 or 3 years, and I think we'll continue to do that. That's been a good that was a good introduction to them. We've also worked with John Brown, unfortunately, who passed away last year, but he joined us on call, and he did a talk and a magic show. So we've had some experience with him. And yeah, I think what happened recently when we came to London was that we met with more RAS fellows, and the carers met with the RAS fellows. So there were ideas afoot, you know, to involve them more at a later stage, and particularly female RAS fellows, I think would be really good for us to start working with more. We've made the links, but again, this year has kind of scuppered a lot of that.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, it's a bit of a sideways step, but some of them are also fellows. But I mean, things that I think it's introduced us into that world, so we get invites and connections into things now that we wouldn't have had.
Yeah.
So things like the Wonder Match program that happened in Glasgow a couple of years ago, you know, we were invited to go along to that, and met a whole load of new people, new connections, and across sciences as well. That's the other thing. It's opened up our access to doing different science approaches, whether it's biology or chemistry or whatever. We're able to connect with people that can do different things with carers. So that's been great. That's been great, and they've all been really supportive, actually. I mean, Stephen is our main partner. That was from that first meeting, Sheila, when he was sitting at the same table as me, and that was kind of it, really. And that bit on the application form, when it came to the question about your fellow to support your application, and at that point I just didn't really know, you know, what did this mean? You know, I wasn't even aware that Stephen was a fellow and all of this sort of stuff. So but anyway, you know, he's our main partner, but that's got a lot to do about just being able to work together with the people that we're working with. And him being able to adapt programs that he previously did for public, you know, groups and for children, and being able to take that and up it, just to place it at where people were without making them feel it was too much or too little. So,
I think that's really important. So if there are any RAS fellows watching, if you want to get involved, do get in touch. Obviously, a lot of things are online at the moment, but that might work well if, you know, if the fellow is based in Cornwall and they want to join you somehow in Scotland. So there are pros and cons to all the online work, I suppose. How has the project affected the people that work at Care for Carers? In terms of the content, in terms of, I mean, you talked a bit about the logistics of the planning, but has astronomy or working with astronomers and things like that changed you guys on any level?
Yeah, I think it's a completely different world from us.
Mhm.
You know, we're sort of embedded in the community, you know, charity, community development, face-to-face world with people and their what's happening in their day-to-day lives. So being allowed to sort of step back from that a bit and literally see the bigger picture, it's a great thing. But I think it's allowed us to be creative, a bit more creative, I think. If I look at the staff team, you know, we're not talking about the same things as every other carer centre in Scotland.
That's true.
You know, we're sitting talking about some very different things, and that's a good thing. It's fresh, and it just brings a new perspective, and that then brings new opportunities. There's just no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that at all.
It's nice that you use the word creative, because people never think of like science necessarily as being creative, and it is, especially astronomy and space, and you know, there's a lot of creativity in there. So that's
I mean, I think every single member of staff was itching to come onto one of the residential breaks. You know, especially the call one. It was like everybody wants to come on that, includes staff, carers. I think we had a couple of new staff who started with us last year, Ruth, who were really excited about the astronomy program within our leaflets. That was kind of what attracted them to us as well. So that was really interesting.
And I get asked about it constantly. Constantly.
Yeah. By other
You know,
professionals.
how did you do that? How did that happen? What's that? What, you know, it's like people are so curious, and that's a good thing as well, because, you know, they're curious about astronomy and they're curious about how this all happened, but they're curious about us as well. So that's a win-win.
Yeah.
You know, it's
looking back at some of the stuff that we've done for the interview, it's incredibly humbling, but I feel so proud of what we've done. You know, it is completely new, and it's big. You know, we're talking about big ideas, difficult concepts, and people are, I don't know, just feel valued that we're bringing that to them, that they're still kind of
I think
capacity to do that.
Yeah,
and I think it's about there are risky elements to it. You know, when we made that application, you know, having somebody fund you who's prepared to go with an element of risk in that, you know, okay, people told us they wanted more of this. We knew there was a desire for some of that, but, you know, we'd never gone to a remote location, never mind a dark sky remote location. We'd never taken a group that far away to a place where we couldn't get them home within an hour. All of those factors for carers, you know, that maybe, you know, would people really feel able to do it? Would we be able to make people feel able to do it? And the truth is we have. Now that's down to staff, that's down to relationships and staff, but, you know, it's a brave thing, actually. Which is good to do. It's good to do these brave things, but it's very rare to have funders that will allow you to go and try that. Go and do that. Go and try it. And RAS200 did that, and I think that's a monumental thing, actually, because most funders are so. And now we've got evidence coming out our ears about.
yeah, because I know at the beginning when we first funded you, we sort of did half the money or 2/3 of the money or something, and then we said, oh, you know, if it's working in 2 years time, have the rest. And
That's
we couldn't
right.
give it, we would have given more to you if we could have done, because it's just been so fantastic. And like you said, it has opened up doors for other funding streams as well, which I think has been really great for you and for us as well. So that's fantastic. What about the people that come on the residentials? What about the carers? How has it affected them, and have there been any kind of surprising outcomes from doing astronomy with your carers?
I mean, I think one of the things that I've noticed is that although we have a good relationship with them, there's quite a bit of sometimes one-to-one support required before they come on the break, but the relationship becomes stronger over the period of 3 or 4 days because we're together for such a long time. They build really good connections with each other. I think one of the things is you see somebody who's really quite shy and hesitant at the beginning of that journey, and who's, you know, not really engaging with very much, and by the end is kind of giggling and laughing and asking Stephen questions. So it's a real confidence boost, I think, to be able to do the whole package, you know, to come on the journey, to be with other people, and then to do that learning with RAS fellows, you know, people who are talking about big subjects. One of the other couple of other things we've had is we've had more male carers, so that was a surprise, and a significant number of more male carers coming forward for the breaks, but then going on to access other kinds of support with us if needed. We've also had more couples joining us on these breaks, and we've had some really positive feedback about how much it's impacted on their relationship, how positive it's been. So we're not a sort of relationship counselling service, but it honestly does feel like it sometimes when you see the impact of people coming together and caring, but, you know, being looked after and just being able to get to know one another again. I think the learning has been phenomenal. I hadn't expected people necessarily to take it on board as much as they have, you know, it being an introduction, but the capacity for learning, especially for me personally in the older age group, has been phenomenal. But, you know, people in their 80s going off to buy a telescope or getting dressed up as an astronaut or doing computer programming, you know, when we're at Dynamic Earth. I think that's been really exciting, and and just a new lease of life for a lot of people. I think we also mentioned in one of our reports that it's had quite an impact on people's well-being as well. People have used some of the techniques and tools that they've learned on the trips, just for instance in terms of going out into the garden at night if they've got a spare minute, just to kind of be still and to look at the stars and the constellations, and that moment of stillness and being aware of something other than the situation at home. That's been marked quite a few times, I think, how much it's helped people ongoing.
It's kind of like space mindfulness and that kind of thing. Yeah. That's amazing. And you mentioned male carers. Are there fewer male carers generally, or is it just that fewer would have interacted with your projects previously?
If we're looking at the national picture, then it's roughly a 60-40 split. So 60% of carers are likely to be women, 40% men. However, it is an ongoing theme across every carers organisation that I know, that you get less men coming forward. Nowhere near 40% of take up for services is from male carers, and most of us are sitting somewhere around 20% take up, 25% roughly. But with the RAS200 work, we saw that shift right up to 36%, 35%, 36%, which is really significant, you know. Now it's smaller groups that you're taking away, but effectively that meant that it sometimes was 50-50 on the groups that we were taking away, male and female, and that wouldn't happen on any other break service that we run. It's always the majority of women, which you would expect, but it's been really nice to be able to put something out there that male carers have obviously felt that was accessible to them, and then once they're in, yes, they're in and they're learning about science and what interests them, but they're also talking about other stuff which they wouldn't have been talking to us about before. So that relationship can then develop, and I think definitely seen a change in the level and strength of one-to-one emotional support to male carers. I think that's a bit anecdotal for me at the minute, but it feels like that has also increased, which is good, which is a great thing. So I mean, I think, like Deepa was saying, in terms of surprising, I didn't see this becoming a coping tool for carers, but it definitely has. The carers that get engaged with it use it to just step outside of what is going on at home for half an hour or whatever, or get up at 2 in the morning to do something while they're doing a caring task. You know, you're up anyway, you may as well go and find out what's going on out there and have a look. So that's been that's been a really great thing. Another thing, I suppose, is going to these remote locations and then now making relationships with the people there. But also something that we're doing and aware of is we're bringing these people with skills to a remote community. We've got other breaks where we're actually bringing in a bit of astronomy as an event on the break.
Okay.
And that means that people haven't signed up. People going to those breaks haven't signed up for a science break, you know, for an astronomy break. But actually, when it's there, they'll take part in it. And then the outcomes from that are, oh, I didn't think I could do that. I wasn't any good at school. I left school at 16.
It's surprising how many people surprise themselves, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like science by stealth, isn't it? It's sort of...
Definitely. And it's there all the time anyway.
It's kind of like, it's putting it in front of people, you know, so it's not a big deal. It's just that's happening. Do you want to join in? But also, we make a point of having something for the local community while we're there. Because if we're going to go and we're taking, you know, these amazing people, you know, fellows and professors and scientists and astronomers, and you know, then they're there, they're delighted to make the most of it. And so we always try and do something that's for the local community. It's like a bit of payback as well. And
that's amazing.
So the local kids and people come, and that's worked brilliantly.
See, I didn't know you did that. That's absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it just sort of evolved. You know, it was that thing of, well, we've got the hall all day. Why don't we have an hour there or 2 hours there that's just for locals, and they all come. They all come, but it's brilliant because then you've got carers and local people together and they're chatting, and you know, it's an island. We're going to meet them the next day out walking somewhere or in the shop or whatever it is that's happening. So it's really, really, really nice, and it's opened, that again opens doors, you know. Yeah.
Amazing. So if one of the participants gets really into astronomy during the residentials, are you able to take it further with them, or sort of work with other organisations so that they can do something else? You know, you mentioned telescopes and computer programming.
They've got quite a lot of the links that Stephen, I mean, they've always got the chance to follow up stuff with Stephen. That's always an option, you know, emails or any other way. They've also we've had a few people who've joined the Edinburgh Astronomical Society because they wanted to pursue it at a more academic level, and to have that contact with other lay people who are doing astronomy regularly. In terms of courses and that one of the carers has gone on to do online courses for himself. We haven't done kind of modular based courses, or we haven't gone into that, but they do get the information generally, you know, from Stephen on the residentials, or we follow it up with them afterwards. I don't know if there's anything else that you can think of, Ruth, that but the follow-up, and just coming on other breaks with us, or following that learning by doing, say, coming on a short break to do a short session on astronomy, and then following that up with a residential, and then a short break. So that kind of really cements the learning and takes it further. We've had Q&A sessions which have been really good. Again, it's a chance for people to ask questions about things that they still want to know about, and things that they didn't understand, or just wondered, oh, what's the point of measuring the distance from Mars to Mercury? So that's been an added kind of feature.
We do in normal times. In normal times, We do really try to evaluate as much as we can.
Yeah.
So we would have you know, we would have a big evaluation event where we bring everyone together that's taken part in breaks to try and find out what is it they need more of, what is it they want to find out more about, where are the gaps, what could we be doing next. And then it's sometimes it's not about us doing it, but making sure we're connecting people up to that, or just trying to build that in to the next part of the program. So it's trying to follow it down. It's probably a bit more complicated now because we've got people at very different stages now. You know, we've still got people coming in that know, you know, don't feel they know a lot, but we've also got people that know quite a bit actually, and whose knowledge is really, really grown over the 5-6 years. So that's a bit, but it's fine. It's just about doing different things to smaller groups, and that's fine. That's fine. It's just trying to keep that, just trying to be responsive to what people ask us about, really.
And how has the pandemic affected the work you do, and how will RAS200 go forwards for you, given the situation at the moment?
Well, the pandemic, as you can imagine, unpaid carers, I mean, they were in lockdown weeks before the rest of us went into lockdown. And the anxiety and the fear and the stress, obviously, everything stopped. So our program, in terms of getting to people, getting face-to-face, getting residentials, all of that stopped overnight. But also respite services stopped overnight, daycare services stopped overnight. So people really had that huge isolation. I mean, we all know this, and we all experienced it to some degree. But for unpaid carers, looking after somebody with an underlying vulnerability, formally shielding a lot of them, but also informally shielding, because to be formally shielding, you had to meet really high criteria. That didn't mean, you know, I mean, if you had MND, you weren't actually on the list. If you had MS, you weren't actually on the list, but obviously you're highly vulnerable. So everything we did switched immediately, as everybody else, to online and telephone, a huge amount of telephone support. And then online and developing that, finding money for people for what they needed. It was very practical tasks with carers. So we had to find PPE, we had to get that sourced, we had to sort that out because it just wasn't out there, people couldn't get it. And then the IT thing, there was a lot of people obviously lonely, not connected, but wanting to be. So for those people, finding the money to get the equipment for them, and that's been a big turnaround for a lot of people actually. They're now able to connect. We do on Zoom what we can do on Zoom. So yes, we have group meetings on Zoom. Yep, quizzes. You know, we've had question and answers with astronomers. We've done a bit of that. We've put out some things that are happening. Big event happening in the sky this weekend. And we put some of that out in hard copy as well. So we upped that as part of our response, was about upping the information we were getting to people. We're worried about people who aren't digitally connected, and maybe they don't want to be for whatever reason. So trying to keep in touch and in contact with them. So putting stuff out in hard copy for them, quizzes and pictures and ideas of what's going on, has been really, really important to do that. So that's where we went. So for us, our bread and butter, taking people away, getting groups together, doing stuff as a group, that stopped, of course, overnight. And now we're trying to work out. Now we're in a phase where, not this particular fortnight, but we're in a place where we're trying to work out what we can do outside, where we can do things outside. So we're hoping we can maybe plan in some astronomy stuff that we could do as a group outside, if we can find the right place, if we can keep people warm and socially distanced. We can try and figure that out. So we've got some movie night plans and question and answers with Stephen and some of his team, and that contact's been really helpful too, because they're obviously all thinking this creatively and outside the box as well just now. And so we have access to some of that, the work that they've been working on. So the packs that they're putting together, you know, around astronomy and space, and they're really creative, and at that, so that's great that we can tap into that, and we can get some of those packs and get them out to carers as well. And that's worked really, really well. People have really enjoyed having, whether it's astronomy, biology, art that we're doing, if we deliver the pack of goodies to them that they need for the session, that's gone down really, really well. Yeah. So yeah, so connection with Stephen's going to help with that. So hopefully in the next 6 months we'll be able to do some of that. But people are desperate. I mean, people are really struggling now. It's been such a long haul for them. You know, they're going into more like month 8 really. Yeah, so desperate to get their breaks, desperate to get back out there. So the pandemic's had that kind of had that effect, but it brings people together in a different way. And I suppose in terms of information, we're getting a lot more information out. We're finding the funding to do that, and re-provisioning some funds that we would have spent on breaks to do that. PPE took a chunk out of the budget, but you know, that's what was needed. That's what people needed. So that's really what we're about. In terms of going forwards, so we I mean, we've been part of a big carers in Scotland. There's Scottish Carers Act came into being a couple of years ago, and funding was placed against that. And of course it went to full procurement. But we went into that, and Stephen was a partner in part of that bid for short breaks going forwards. So we've got through that process. So from next year, we've got 5 years that we've protected, and part of that delivery is about continuing what we're doing in terms of what we have been doing with RAS. I know we've made the RAS money spread a bit further because we did that matching, trying to lever it, trying to really use it as a lever. And when you get that opportunity to have secured monies for something like 5 years, again in the third sector, you know, we dream of this stuff, but then you've got to lever that as much as you possibly can, and so that's paid off hugely. And the evidence that we garnered from the work we had done, that underpinned that part of the application. I've got no doubt at all that's what made the difference. Because we've walked it, we've done it. You know, it was there. We've tried it. We've tested this. We've tested that. We've risk assessed. Our compliance was completely there in place, and the learning was there, and the outcomes were there. We were able to evidence those outcomes. So going forwards, it's really, really put us into a good place. Because we're a small organisation. You know, it's a big deal going into procurements against really big organisations who have got, you know, every right to be brilliant at procurement, contracting and bidding. But yeah, I think we were able to.
I do think you're one of the smaller organisations we've worked with. Yeah. But equally as successful as the large ones, which says something, you know, so it shows how hard you've been working. So yeah. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to doing a Zoom session in next week or the week after with
I think it's next week.
It's come around. But it's, you know, in that sense, and I know the digital access is a huge issue for everyone. You know, I'm always aware of that when I'm teaching young people as well. But at least it does mean that there is that, it breaks down the geographical barriers. So there is that positive to it.
Yeah.
I suppose, I mean, it's become more of an issue, hasn't it, over the pandemic? But I think one of the successes of the previous work that we were doing was that it wasn't reliant on digital access. It was almost like a bonus, but there was so much hands-on work happening, you know, like actually figuring out how a telescope works, how to make your own telescope, and how to observe things in the night sky just using, you know, binoculars, using a so that was really good, and it would be really good to get some of that back again, because that does bring in more people. It does encourage more people. It makes it more accessible.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that I would mention was that it's like it inspires hope, the project. One of the really lovely things over the period of the lockdown was that you brought out the RAS video of us on call, and we kind of disseminated that quite widely, but especially the people who had come on that trip or on other call trips were so excited to see it and remembered it so fondly and had such good memories of it, and we're looking forward to making more memories. So that was a really lovely kind of chink of light in what was a very dark time for people. You know, oh, this was beautiful, this was inspiring, and we will go on to do more of this. Yeah, it was just very special, I think.
That's inspiring hope. That's not what we set out to do, but that's far better than anything that we could have set out to do. That's really exciting. Do you think this project has changed how Care for Carers works, and do you think for the next 200 years things will be different now because of this project?
No, I think RAS200 has really changed how we work, and it's changed lots of things about us, and about our confidence actually as well as an organisation, I think, because I think we're, you know, it's that thing about being given the opportunity to take a little bit of risk on things and then trying it and working out, you know, the bits that work really well, and just maximising that and following through. So we've learned loads about not being afraid to follow down. You know, when people tell us, we look at evaluation completely differently now. It's not just something that we want to do a bit more behind it. You know, we want to use different techniques to try and get responses from people. In a normal world, we do this. We're really missing that this year. Yeah. Really missing that. But you know, if you listen and you gather people's feelings in the right way, and you trust in that, and then find a way to answer it, that's going to take you in a direction that's meeting the needs of the people you're serving, but also going to be really satisfying. I mean, it's really satisfying to do something new and different, and you know, for it to work. It's just great. So I don't think we're in a hurry to let any of that go, you know. We get a bit overwhelmed with work, you know, workload gets a bit, you know, and right now, the pandemic, you know, I mean, it's we're having some pretty overwhelming conversations with people. It's hard. It's been really hard. But you know, it's that thing about allowing the creative side to remain there, and not thinking outside the box a bit, and thinking sideways, and not just following the same route that you might be more comfortable with.
Yeah,
a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning, but you know, here we are in a Zoom meeting with you.
I think it was quite uncomfortable, because I remember saying to Ruth, but I haven't got a science background, or we haven't, you know, how do we do this? How do we design this? How do we go about it? And then, was it just last year we were invited to be part of, it was an Edinburgh University event, inviting students to talk about science education and inviting community practitioners as well. And we were one of the kind of lead people on that table. And that was really something to, you know, that people were asking us, how do we go, how do we do this? How do we bring this to the community? And that was hugely kind of, it's a big step for us, I think, to be talking about how to bring science to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would never have imagined that.
Oh gosh, no.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
So just a sort of cheeky question to finish, really. If you could do astronomy on any island in Scotland or any place in the world, where would it be and why?
I did think about this, and I looked up other islands. That just this morning, so there was Japan and places in South Africa and the States, and I had to come back to the Isle of Coal. It has to be the Isle of Coal because of the memories that we have associated with that place, the work that we've done, the relationships that we've built. Yeah, I can't think of anywhere better.
Yeah, I think we could travel it around all the Scottish islands, Deepa.
Oh, God, we could
just one at a time.
Just never go home.
Yeah, just keep moving.
Definitely.
Follow the ferry timetable.
We should buy a boat and just.
Oh, absolutely.
Great,
absolutely. Although with the carers, we have had discussions about going further afield to places like Chile. You know, it's like, oh, can we do that at some point?
Yeah,
that might take a bit more organisation, but yeah.
I haven't managed to. Well, I've never visited any of the islands in Scotland yet, and I haven't been on one of your residences.
Oh, you must. Yeah.
I think I prefer to do that over Chile or somewhere like that. So at the moment, so that'll be in my when we're allowed to travel again.
Yeah.
Brilliant. No, well, it's been lovely talking to you today. I've learned a lot about the project that I didn't know before, and it's really been quite inspiring to hear about the outcomes for yourselves and for the participants. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for talking to me today, really.
Thanks, Sheila.
That was absolutely fantastic. It was so interesting and so inspiring. And now I think it's time to watch the Care for Carers Isle of Coal video. Enjoy.
So the reason why we come to Coll is because they have internationally accredited dark sky status. Their skies have been measured, and there's a dark sky group on the island.
I knew very little about coal. I'd heard of it. I knew it was in the Hebrides, and that was it.
I'm here because my brother came over from Cyprus to attend a funeral, and he didn't recognise any of the family. We took him up to the hospital, and he was diagnosed with having dementia. He had never known that he had dementia up until that point. He knew there was something going on in his mind, but he just wasn't sure what it was.
The chance to relax, to be among other carers, a large number of whom I already know, get away from my caring role for a weekend, and besides the astronomy, it's absolutely brilliant for birding too.
I am a carer for both my wife and son who have got a form of muscular dystrophy.
We're here running the Coll in the Cosmos course for carers on a respite break. Doing this now for 4-5 years. We've been working with the carers for that long. I think we've been bringing them here since around about 2016. 2014, the Royal Astronomical Society were already planning to celebrate their 200th anniversary. I was a newly elected fellow of the society, and so some emails had went out saying we're looking for ideas for projects to celebrate the anniversary. We've got this money here, and we're looking for 5 to 10 projects. There was some town hall meetings that were planned around the country. The closest one to me was at Dynamic Earth in Edinburgh, so I'd went in there. Round about then we'd not long set up the planetarium. So again, I was just looking for people to engage with, work with, and it seemed like a really good idea to go along. And just as chance would have it, I was sitting at the table at one point. We mixed around the room with Ruth, who's the manager at Care for Carers. So they were doing respite breaks for carers, and we were coming to call and doing astronomy breaks. So it seemed quite an interesting collaboration to see if we could sort of combine those two events.
Previous to the astronomy breaks, we had only ever been able to visit very local kind of sites. So one of our main respite breaks was in a place called Linlithgow, which is only 20 miles outside of Edinburgh. And all our breaks took place there. So we didn't go very far, we didn't have the capacity, and we didn't have the funding. So this has enabled us to take the breaks as far afield as Col. We've been to Dumfries and Galloway as well with the money, and we're now doing some work on the Isle of Lismore. So it's become a real feature of our work.
Compared to Edinburgh, Col's so peaceful, so quiet, much darker. You see a completely different array of stars. So for example, in Edinburgh, I can go out at night and you can recognise the plough, you can find the North Star, I can find Cassiopeia, and really there's not an awful lot more that I can recognise. And Orion, of course. But you can only see so many constellations. You come here and there's so many stars in the sky that you can hardly even find the ones that you know.
W there, do you see it straight above us? That's the Cassiopeia. That's the actual Milky Way. You can just make it out, yeah? Just see there.
People find it difficult to understand and it's quite isolating as a man. But this gives me that time to enjoy with other people that you get to know. And for me to get here, I've got to get my wife into respite, son into respite, with all the medication and whatnot, and then Care for Carers to help by arranging things with the help of the Royal Astronomy Society. It makes life so much easier.
I know that there's stars in the sky and I like standing watching them, you know, sometimes I like watching them, but I didn't know a lot about them. And I found it really interesting and educational, informative, with the stuff that the guys with the astronomy, I didn't know any of that existed. So I think it's made me look at things a wee bit differently.
I think one of the biggest things for the carers is that they're away from their caring situation, and that's really hard for people to get away. Not always because they can't get away, but because of their own feelings of guilt, of leaving the person behind. But coming away, meeting other carers, realising that this is acceptable, this is good, this is actually will benefit them and the person that they care for. I think that's something that they come to realise over the few days.
Now I know what I'm going to ask my wife to get me for my Christmas, which is going to be a telescope.